Five Pin Universe's 17th podcast, a live edition. Woo! We have the regulars, the Wisemans, Dexter and Tim, Adam Weber, and our special guest is Bubble Boy Robbie Wolfson. So we're going to start out. Our first question is, what do you think makes pinfall better in a house? Is it the approaches or the oil conditions or even the pin bands? Let us know your thoughts.
For me, it's the approaches. I'll actually go to an event, 45 minutes, an hour early just to make sure I got a slide down. Once I get a slide down, I think everything else kind of goes to it, but you need some oil out there. Bands are obviously big. The new pins, pin bases in Edmonton are massive, right? But approaches are probably the key, in my opinion.
I think you're showing up an hour early because that's how long it takes you to get up on the lanes.
Not true.
For me, it's a combination of both, really. The approaches don't affect me as much unless it's a place that's extremely fast. Otherwise, I prefer heavier approaches, but I can handle anything in between except for like the really lightning fast. I prefer to have a set of lanes that have a little bit of movement on them anyways. I find pinfall tends to increase with a little bit of back end movement, but that works for me anyways.
And that's oil, right? Back end movement's more oil?
Back end movement would be less oil.
Less oil on the back.
In comparison to if you go to places like Heritage is very oily, right?
Yeah.
So you won't get any movement at the end at all. Whereas I prefer playing in Sherwood Park, obviously, but at the end there's a lot of movement at the end, so I prefer that for sure.
I think it's a little bit about depends on the tournament, I think, in a way, because for me personally, I agree with Adam on it. I definitely need to have a better slide. The approaches are big for me, but we're talking about lane conditions. I think if your approaches are fine, you can adjust to those and find something that works for you. I find that I can adjust for a dry set of lanes or a fast set of lanes. If we're playing somewhere like Heritage, I know maybe the scores might not be as high as, say, at a place like Bonnie Doon, just because of the conditions. So I'm probably even more adept to making sure the approaches are better, just so I can grind it out and maybe at a Masters tournament, maybe, still trying to shoot 2200, but you're also playing for seeding, so you end up grinding a little bit more.
And I think the big thing too is consistent approaches, because you can meet some houses where the lanes are different, so you can slide on one lane and stick on another, so you need to be consistent.
You're right.
For me, I've had a knee injury, which was my slide knee a number of years ago now, but I need to be confident that I can slide, because obviously that's your release. Your feet speed up if your approaches aren't consistent. Like, that really messes with your mind, and you lose your confidence on your delivery and your release.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen pinfall plummet because not even just inconsistent from lane to lane for the slide, but inconsistent on the lane from inside to outside. There was one center we were at for Masters a couple of years ago where it was super, super slick up the middle. But if you slid outside to go for the corners or anything, it was like walking into a brick wall. Right. And that is not it's going to injure you, and B, it's just you lose all trust on your shot because you never know what's going to happen.
That's what I was expecting out of Stetler this year. And then approaches were great for Master Stetler this year.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you see scores skyrocket.
Yeah.
Right? There's a direct correlation to it. Do you guys find that there's a bigger difference on wood approaches versus synthetic approaches for that consistency factor?
I think it more depends on the center and how they drag lanes. I think most of the time when you start seeing there can be a difference with the wood lanes for sure, but I find most of it is when people start dragging the lanes off the lanes and onto the approaches. Dragging that oil onto there is what's really going to make them super heavy, and then somebody complains that it's slick.
Yeah.
Or somebody complains that it's heavy.
Yeah.
And they go out there and they clean up that one spot, and then all of a sudden everything is slick, and then everything on the outside is heavy. But there can be inconsistencies with wood, and that's simply due to humidity. Humidity plays a big factor on the wood lanes. Everything has a water-based coating on top of protective coating, so as the humidity picks up, it will make them heavier. So that you can find approaches will change throughout the weekends, and it'll also change based on how much of that protective coating has been worn off too.
I find a huge difference with synthetic. I use a rubber heel and I squeak all the time, but obviously you don't have that kind of friction on a wood lane on approach, but on a synthetic lane you have a little bit more grab with the rubber there.
Well, I had to go to that. What do they call it? The leading edge heel, like to get away from that, because I was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And then at least now you can get a bit of a truer slide with it.
For sure.
I think that's one of the biggest things why Bonnie Doon's actually improved so much over the last 5-6 years, because that approach, that slide is, to me, it's very consistent, but it's really quick.
It's
right?
so fast.
But there's nobody that
no
having
friction.
the issue with sticking.
No, but I literally I've moved back 6 feet
Yeah.
to try to throw my shot, and I'm ending up.
That's just
an
because the
inch
panels
behind.
are flipped, right?
It's,
like
it's,
there's 2 feet right there.
but it's crazy. I'm literally at the back of the approaches,
Yeah.
and I will slide probably 10 feet.
Yeah.
Like it's insane. It's really hard for me to be aggressive with my shot because of that, and that's why I don't really like the really fast approaches.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard for me to stay aggressive in my shot. So yeah, I prefer heavier, of course, but
Well, that's an adjustment you can make with the now how everything is with replaceable heels and sliders.
I honestly changed from an S8 to an S4, and within about 4 balls, it had enough coating on it that it was exactly the same. It was brutal.
You gotta change your heel then. Jeez.
I mean, there's times there's times I just move up a little bit because it's more mental, but now you're closer to the line, so it just forces you to keep your feet a bit slower. So then naturally you'll have a bit more control in your slide.
That'll
just
work.
moving up a
I'd be
little bit.
halfway down the lane.
Yeah, that'll work because after the first 3 times you do it, you're gonna have so much oil on your slider that
Just a little bit. Or how about lane 1 in Regina this weekend?
Yeah, slide. Don't
into the
don't tell
wall.
Kevin that. Manager doesn't know that.
Hey, that should be the first thing we put on 5-Pin Universe. Throw a ball on lane 1 approach and watch it slam against lane 1's wall.
The solution is have like 2 or 3 beers and you'll start leading. That's right. It's fine.
That's right.
I guess that kind of leads us into the next question. Drinking in professional bowling, do you believe that it hinders the sport to be recognized, or do you think it's a non-starter? There's plenty of other sports that do it. A lot of people consider them laughable sports, like darts. Obviously, they drink live on that. Let me know.
I don't think so. I don't personally think so. I think I think there's like a line, obviously, but there's lots that go into it. First of all, it's a proprietor-ran sport, so it's really hard to deter organizations or anything like that to make it dry events, because at the end of the day, this game, WCBT and some of the boards are progressing, but a lot of the game we are losing people, and as an industry, we need to make money. The biggest expenses are leases and stuff like that, and it's really hard to pay rent when you're not able to even sell liquor. So from the proprietor standpoint, I think that it's a necessity. As a sport itself, I don't really think it really deters. I don't think it makes the game laughable or not on the same level as other sports, considering the history of some of the other major sports out there. It was all the same. You heard stories of people in the NHL being hammered, not remembering games. Same thing happened with baseball. I think it's kind of part of sport, and I think they've slowly moved away from it, but I don't think it makes us any less of a sport when the history is all there for all the others.
Back in the day, we had Carling O'Keefe as a main sponsor, right? Now, part of the reason why Carling O'Keefe, some of you guys can probably clarify with me, is because we don't allow liquor to be bowled in an event. You can't drink liquor, and you can't do it while you're playing a provincial national event for most provinces. So they didn't seem that was a viable sponsorship anymore, and that's why they kiboshed it. So that aspect, I see we can get some valuable resources on that aspect. As for, I don't know, I see bowling no different than curling or pool in a way. I think maybe you don't see the curling during the prior, they're drinking during it, right? They're probably either in the water bottles or back in the behind scenes, right? But we just have it out more visible, right? So I'm indifferent on that, I guess. I know I told Carrie no earlier, pretty emphatically, but He did tell me that it is not an Olympic sport, and I am not a weightlifter, so so I guess that goes out the drain. But as for sponsorship and making things better with proprietors, I think we allow it.
Definitely think it's a fine line, right? Like you take a look at so-called professional, right? And what does it take to be professional? And in this tour itself, WCBT is on the cusp of becoming more of a professional style of 5-pin bowling, right? You're starting to see it in just what we wear when we're out there. And I think in the big matches, you're not going to see too many people drinking. Right, it's just it's a little less professional in my personal opinion. I've got no problem with people going out there because I'll go out there in a dry event and have just as much success, right? But there are still events that are out there that are dry during the event, right? And I think those are more the professional events that we've got in our repertoire.
I think most of those are team events, for the most part, right? I think if you're looking at things like darts and pool, like Tim had said, a lot of that it's muscle memory sports and they're individual sports, and I think that's kind of where it draws a line. If your muscle memory is good enough that you can compete at the highest level while consuming alcohol, I don't really see it being unprofessional. If you're at the highest level, you are as close to being professional as you can be. But I think the team event is kind of where it kind of draws the line. Yeah. Because you don't want to ever be that person that kind of lets people down, right?
But here's my thing with that. For team events, I think you can still allow liquor. If you have a good team or a good leader on the team or a good manager, a good coach, you can probably get away with it, right? You probably say, hey, maybe you've had enough, or hey, we're kind of in this thing. The only one I would really worry about is the runaway. Oh, we're gonna be last no matter what. We got another day and a half left, right? And that could screw over the whole provincial event. But I'm actually okay with individuals drinking and all that kind of stuff. It's a little bit different with like Pete Weber. Pete Weber is not a cookie cutter bowler. He has personality and stuff like that. And in all fairness, when I think about bowling, back in the heyday and back when you say pool or all that, these guys are all characters. They may be a little bit lively, different in the game, but I'm not saying we need somebody absolutely, falling down, completely smashed on the lane, but have a little bit more personality. I know Weber really gives me a hard time about it, but I mean, I might have a few beers when I play on certain events, and it does help me in a way. I find a little bit more of a drug in a way where if I have 2 or 3 beers, Weber knows automatically if I'm playing well, I stop thinking, right?
Well, yeah, Tim. Everybody that listens to the podcast knows that your mental game and your adjustments are like top notch.
No, in all fairness, you guys make fun of my coaching. I said go to YouTube, go to C5PBA. I have some really good tutorials out there for all you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, well, to Dex's point, sometimes it's you're in the middle of a block and maybe you're tightening up a little bit, so it's nice to have a beer because it does help calm your nerves, relax. But it's just to the point where you're not getting out of control. I mean, whether or not, obviously we're not Olympic athletes, but the mental part of our game is as strong as any other professional sport that's out there. And whatever you need to do to execute that shot in that moment, and if you can still play while you're drinking, as long as you're not out of control and in control. I've heard stories of people back in the day before our time about how there was lots of crazy people and lots of crazy things that happen with people drinking while they're playing. But I think it's a different sport today, and obviously we're trying to be role models for youth coming up, and it's whatever you need to do to execute, but also being responsible for your person and if you're on a team, and you just need to be able to execute in that moment your shot. So if you need to have a beer while you're doing it, I don't think there's any harm in that.
Is the question more of a perception, though? Right? If you had, say, the 2 best players, one best, that never drank or never drank while bowling, versus somebody who gets sloshed during the events, is there a perception that those 2 are truly different?
For sure. Okay, so here's a good one, actually.
According
to your podcast, 5-Pin Universe rankings, Mitch Weber. Sorry, Adam Weber doesn't drink. Mitch Davies doesn't.
He'd be short.
All right. So those 2 are polar opposites. Maybe have a poll on right now who's better and who's not when it comes to perception.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
but-
it's very viable. It's exactly perception, though.
But in all professional sports, you have different personalities and you have different outlooks on the game, and you'll have somebody that is like the cleanest cut guy out there, and everyone's like, you know, like Sidney Crosby. Sidney Crosby, like everybody hates him, but he's as clean as it is. And then you'll have somebody like, you know, Dan Carcillo back in the day who would run everybody. Sean Avery, who was like the furthest thing from professional, right? But they're still in the professional sport. It's just a different sort of personality that comes out of it.
Yeah. Or Mika Kiprusoff, you hear stories of he's always in the bars, you know, smoking cigarettes and pounding vodka after the games, or probably even in intermissions. Who knows, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I just think once you start getting on to a media outlet, I think it takes a little bit away from the professionalism if somebody has a beer in their hand while they're out there taking a shot for $5,000. I don't know, that's my personal take on
there's
it.
a lot of money on the line, so if someone wants to risk losing that or losing a match for a lot of money because they're drinking too much, I mean, that's their risk. But to your point, though,
could be
you're
the
right.
first round on the A side, right? But if you start getting hammered here, it might take away that $5,000. But it's personal preference, right? And that's why it is an open setting. It's just I think it's more of a perception than an absolute.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between professionalism and a professional sport.
I think there's also a way you could look at it. Is it the way you want the sport projected, right? Because look at darts. Darts is completely open drinking during all the professional events. Or do you want to be an Olympic sport, right? How are we trying to sell this sport is a way to look at it as well. Yeah. Let's be serious. None of us are Olympic athletes.
Oh, what a lie.
Wolfson.
But darts is deeply respected in its fan base, and it is actually nodded upon to drink during your event and play well while you're drinking. So it's more of a perception or how you want to sell it.
So what promotes our game better? As an industry, as a sport, what promotes the game better? And to me, when the upper echelon of bowling is 1 or 2% and 98% of bowling is people wanting to go out to leagues, socialize, have a drink, and have a good time, I don't think it's always bad for us to show us having a good time too.
Time out. Here's my thing, okay? So we run a center, right? We promote liquor sales, right? We promote liquor sales. We promote having a good time. But we are all proprietors out there promote family fun times, right? So you're trying to have both, but you have an naysay on really in one, really, because you could, liquor sales for...
The amount of birthday parties that we have in the company that I'm like, you know what, I'm going to have a couple beers.
But you get the point, though, right? We're promoting... We don't want to promote liquor sales during events, or some events, right, to say, naysay it, right? But they're also the same ones who promote liquor sales in general. So it's kind of counterintuitive, the whole thing.
And I think it's good that we have different personalities of people that do drink and don't drink too, because that just mirrors society as a whole. I mean, you don't drink when you bowl. You don't drink when you bowl, and you drink after, but you don't drink while you bowl. So at least that sort of kind of puts you towards the people that may not drink in life. Saying, well, Adam Weber, he's straight edge. He doesn't drink or whatever. And then you know what? Somebody who does party a little bit harder might love Tim Wiseman because he's hammered while he bowls.
No, it's not hammered, right?
It's not hammered.
I'm exaggerating.
Okay. Yeah, I was just gonna say that, Adam. Like when you're watching, if you go to watch the finals this weekend on the tournament or any previous tournament, and you're watching the People Bowl or the YouTube broadcast of the WCPT finals from last August, we may be having a drink in the background, but it's not like we're up on the lanes pounding a beer before we go through a ball, right? So you come back, you have a drink, it's discreet, and everyone who's competing, they're in control. Like there's no one that are out there. You may be having a drink in the background, but you know what's on the line. It's in control.
Out of the 15 years on tour, I think we only had one issue. I think I had with alcohol, not for me, but one issue with one person making the finals, and he was too intoxicated to participate properly, and he kind of ruined the whole thing.
Is that a Collingwood?
No, it was at Autumn Open 16s.
Well, that's the
A
thing.
gentleman from Manitoba.
There's always one person, right? That ruins it for all the people that do it responsibly.
Right. So
Right, just like
Yeah.
in our open trials,
Yeah.
we can bowl while we're playing. So why can't we
I
have
have.
a drink when we're at provincials?
I think-
It's the
I
same
think I-
tournament,
I think
Yeah.
basically.
Well, I think you
Robbie,
can. Can you not?
no, you
Is
can't
it
drink.
On buys
Buys
and,
buys
and
and
lunches.
lunches.
See,
Okay.
Robbie, I'm a big component. I think we should be drinking during the provincials.
Yeah.
I think so, but
You should have the option to
Option
drink
to.
to not be drinking.
Yeah. Always drink that
Should-
stuff.
should-
oh,
Should be
okay, all right.
forced.
Open
Grab
it
a
up.
place over here.
we got a funnel. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm closer to Adam. Like I'll have a beer, but I'm not going to drink excessively. But I also can't seem to make a cut, so maybe I should start. So who knows?
Okay,
anyways,
so
next-
moving on to that. So we're literally the day before the 2019 Regina Classic. So we had a couple questions. How do you guys approach the last couple games of your qualifying shift when you have an idea of what the predicted cut is? Do you take a different thought process going into these last two games, or is it business as usual?
business as
all,
usual.
all depends how the first 6 went.
You're exactly what I was
Right.
gonna say. If I'm playing really well, my first 6, if I'm playing good, I don't even look at the score sheet because it doesn't matter. You know
Yeah.
you're playing good. You know you're going to be good enough for the cut. You don't even worry about it. But if you struggled a little bit and you're starting to pick it up and you're getting better, that's when I look after game 6 and I'll be like, you know what? If I shoot 650 in my next 2, I'm okay. And then that gives me a little bit of motivation.
Yeah. I don't know.
But if I'm playing well for the first 6, the last 2 don't matter.
I don't know. I'm totally. I don't know. To me, I'm okay with that. I play different. Probably. I don't play any differently. No, I wouldn't. I think I just status quo. If I'm playing really well, honestly, I wouldn't look at the score really anymore because I know I'm playing well. But I become over superstitious, like absolutely, like to the max over superstitious. Like
beer.
I'm it's true though. It's true. Like I would have to sit in the same spot if I'm playing well. I have to do the same things every time, and it just if I did something well for one game, then I'll carry over it. Hopefully, I don't do 10 different things well, because then I'll be up on the approach like Adam. But I mean, it's all the same with that. I'm very superstitious when I play longer, so I try to keep things status quo the best I can.
You should just try to stay in the moment,
Yeah.
right? You know how you played probably the first 6, right? You know if you're needing big scores. Everybody has kind of a cut number in their mind. So you usually know what double you need the last 2, right? If you go in knowing that you're going to need 450, you might only shoot 520, 500,
Yeah.
right? So you want to keep that status quo. You're always going out there trying to shoot 300 plus, right? I don't know. That's
Yeah.
I think, like, I'm going to chime in here.
Mark Johnstone.
I think, like, for me, if I'm, like, close to making the cut or, like, I'll probably very close to making the cut line above or below, I'll probably, like, slow things down a little bit for me. I need to focus a little bit more, concentrate on what I'm doing a little bit more, and just kind of slow everything down a little bit. Because you kind of get a little antsy, you kind of get to the end before you're there. So I would just slow everything down, take my time, and just focus a little bit more. So that's what I would do.
not my issue.
Yeah.
Status quo.
See, I'm the opposite. I
Yeah,
get too quick.
I
and
totally get it.
Up too fast.
Yeah,
so I
adrenaline
need to
starts
slow
running.
everything down.
Honestly, that's
Calm
probably
down.
95% of players in that right. You start thinking about scores. You start again. You're looking at the finish line. You can't look at the finish line. You gotta stay with the ball that's in your hand. Right?
Yeah, and I think this is actually a great question for me because well documented. I'm the bubble boy in many tournaments. And I'm usually actually fine for the first 5-6 games, but it's just when it's getting down to those final few games where, for whatever reason, you just start hearing people around you, whatever, getting on a run, getting loud. I try not to pay attention to the scoreboard because I don't want someone who maybe he's not even in it, but he's getting loud. But then I get nervous because that person may be that person that's chasing me or I'm chasing them. So I need to find a way personally just to stay in that moment. Just worry about my own scores because there's so many other things going around you that you can't control. Yeah, you need to find a way to stay in your own game, in your own moment. I think that's where I lose my confidence a little bit. Why I always finish a few pins short because instead of focusing on my own game, I'm kind of looking around and looking at the scores and this and that, and so I guess maybe your guys' advice how I can personally focus on my own stuff. What do you guys do?
But honestly, Robbie, I mean, shooting 2200s and not making the cut is not necessarily
2200s.
3. Okay, well that's even worse.
2 in the same here.
but realistically, that's something you can't control.
Yeah.
You can't control a 2200 and you not making a 2200. It just right. You played well. You just missed maybe a couple pins here or whatnot. And I don't think you can really be upset about that. If you're shooting a 2000 and you all you do is shoot 2100 and you had 1600, all you do is shoot 500 to make it the last two, then you probably have to start analyzing that a little bit more. But I don't think you really have to. I know we harp on you a lot, and we love harping on you, but
I take it as fun.
But I don't think you have to change anything there. It just you have to be confident with it still.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead. No, you.
Yeah, one recommendation I would make is those final 2 games. If you do feel that pressure starting to hit you, go talk to somebody about something non-bowling. Just take your mind off of bowling. Just get back to like a normalcy.
My game lives on that.
It's incredible how important it is. Even last year at this event, playing the consolation round, and I had Mike Lacussier standing next to me. We were just talking about some of his old hockey and Wetaskiwin, some event that he was in with Wetaskiwin. Literally, you don't even realize you go out there, throw a strike, come back, and you're not thinking about bowling, right? Yep. So you take a little bit of the nerves out, and then you just control what you can control.
That is 100% the reason why you'll never see me in like a singles event sit down below and just stare at the screen or watch bowling or whatever. I'm always the guy that's up top talking to somebody. Always. It's just
Yeah, that makes sense. And 2 years ago, last game, I had Mark Miller just at the table, and we were just chatting about stuff, and I ended up banging out 5-bagger for 335, and that's when I had my 2220.
You thought he was there. Right?
Text my wife that I made the cut finally, and the cut was 2227. Right? So
how disappointed was she?
Yeah. But to your point, you're right. Mark and I were just talking. Mark and I were just talking about just random stuff. It wasn't anything about bowling. It was
Brewster's was really good that day, wasn't it?
That's right. Exactly.
So following that same line, Robbie, what do you think the cut's going to be?
Bubble Boy?
Yeah. 1 more plus whatever Tim says.
Red Deer was awesome.
Red Deer. Yeah. 2103. Don't worry, Rob. Cut's 2104. Yeah, screw you, Tim Wiseman.
Wasn't it actually Tim Wiseman, though?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Tim,
and I won consolation.
and then he won consolation.
Robbie was on Suicide Watch.
Yeah, I was on Suicide Watch. Yeah, that sucked. But no, obviously I listened to the podcast last week, and Kevin said that the scores are probably going to be a little bit lower, but I don't know. I still don't believe it. It's still Regina. It's still great players. It's still people that as you guys have all talked about in the last few podcasts, like just the competition's better. Bowlers are better. People bring their A games here. The best of the best still come out. I still think it's going to be 2200. Maybe not.
You said 2170 something like 5 minutes ago.
No. I still think it's 2200. I mean, I'm shooting. As you guys always tell me, bring my 2250 games. So that's what I'm shooting for. But yeah, 2190.
I think it all depends on how many players we got. I mean, I think the players are still quality. We were looking at 105 based off what different unique players, and then if there's another 25 or 30 people going, so you're 130. You're probably sitting around that 200 mark. Yeah. If it all depends on rebuys and who plays, and again, the people who are here playing this weekend are really good players.
Yep.
It's just a matter who comes out.
Right, and we'll keep the special guest trend going. So, Robbie, who was your mentor growing up?
So not to pump his tires, but
Mitch Davies.
Mitch Davies, or the other, actually, or the better bowler, Adam Weber. I started, some people know this, but a lot of people don't. I actually didn't start bowling until I was 15 years old. I played 2 years of IBC just as a senior, but I wasn't very good. Just 160, 170 average bowler. Then no one really got me. I didn't have a ton of coaching at the time. I was a lower average bowler because I didn't come up to the ranks, didn't play a lot of tournaments. I just started working as a teenager, so I couldn't play Saturday morning. So I just kind of walked up, lived close to Chinook Center, started playing just fun cash leagues in the evening leagues. Adam was a pin chaser. He just started giving me tips, and I just started every year, just slowly, progressively getting better. Back in the day, the men's league on the Masters League at Chinook was the league to play in, but it was a draft league. Lots of great players in Calgary, and Adam was in the league. He became a captain, I think, the second year that you're in the league, something like that. And then I think I was maybe a 220 average at the time, and then so Adam drafted me on his team, and the rest is history. So I just started to get to know the players in town. I started playing 2 leagues. Got to know the Webbers, the Sandersons. Started playing a toddler as well. But it was really Adam and I. We used to go and just throw game after game, and I never knew how much money you could lose playing a dime a pin. But lost hundreds of dollars at a dime a pin back in the day. So, but no, it was Adam.
So Robbie, was Adam saw you for your talent, or just looking for a friend?
Or was he just trying to take your money?
yeah, easy target. Easy target.
It worked.
Yeah. No, but it was Adam.
Awesome.
It was Adam.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So following with the questions, what's your favorite tournament?
TPC always has a place in my heart. It was the first cut I ever made. I made the cut by 1 pin over Greg Gigliuk when it was at Collingwood still. First match, here's me, rookie in a cash tournament, and I'm playing Gino Zebarth. Gino in his prime, Gino, and I won that match, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Went to the Bs, won that match, went to the A's, lost that match, and then I ran the Bs after that, and I beat Michael Cousier. Obviously Mike's an awesome player. I remember even one time Gino coming up, I was just kind of down below doing my thing, but Gino came up to Mike afterwards, and I wasn't supposed to hear him, but Gino basically whispered in Mike's ear, "Don't let him get ahead of you, you'll never catch up." And I ended up beating Mike that round. Played Brad Wilton in the semifinals, and then I lost to Blair Pizzi in the finals, and of course Blair was an awesome player too back in the day. So TPC always has a place in my heart for sure. I love the Open though too. I just love just because I haven't played Masters Nationals yet. I'm hoping to one day with you guys, but the Open, I just love I love being on a team and just being in a team element, and just trying to be a positive support for a team, and just getting a team pumped up and trying to help that team out. So I love the team aspect of the Open as well.
I think not many people know about Robbie's coaching the Calgary men's team, and I think he'll be really good with them.
Excellent coach.
I think you'll be a hell of a pickup.
Got a great mind for it.
Yeah, thanks Tim, appreciate that.
So I commented too.
Yeah. I've already given you kudos.
We're gonna have to get construction open the door.
He pumped your tires once already.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you want
your
him
head's
to
big
get
enough.
down on his knees? Like, what do you want, man?
Oh, man.
Bring that pillowcase.
So Robbie, your toughest match?
That's well, I already said it, Blair. I mean, it's because obviously that was my first time making a finals in a cash tournament, and only to this date. But I think I still threw. I don't remember the score exactly, but I know I played well. I think I was still 8.5-ish range, and
he was on fire.
He was on fire. So for sure, Blair, for individual match.
Awesome. And then so let us know what's in your bag. What's your arsenal?
It's kind of funny. I've again played
Yes,
forever,
no
but I have no idea. I have, I'm not the first person on the podcast to say this, and I have different balls, but even last night I was calling Mark Miller, do you think I should bring these balls or these balls? Because I always even myself forget kind of what type of balls work best in what situations and what houses. But I have a pair of blue soft rolls that I use mostly. For whatever reason, I just love the way they feel coming, just the way they feel off my fingers. So I think I get a bit more rotation with those balls. I have a pair of purple,
reactives.
Those Epco reactive U's that I play a lot with. And my first set of balls was the purple and white Paramounts.
Yeah.
My Reacta, they're all around 3.8, 3.10, 4.7/8. Like they're all basically the same size, a little bit lighter, but no big variation. But I use my soft rolls mostly, and then my purple reactive U's are a little bit lighter, so I like they have good roll on them, and then my Paramounts as well.
All reactors are just kind of that middle ground between
Yeah,
the two, right?
exactly.
So you have all three options.
Yeah, the Paramounts are a bit harder, and then the reactives are a nice middle ground. So for sure. And then I wear Dexter SSTs as well. Don't know what they are, but I have no idea. You know, it's funny because I used to always just kind of have like a running shoe style shoes, but again, I mentioned earlier I had a knee injury, so actually Greg Pederitis at the time was watching me, and he's like, you should have a wider base on your shoe and just have the rechangeable sliders. And again, not really just paying attention to that stuff at the time. I'm like, that makes sense, just to control my slide. And if I have firmer plant, then I'll have a better release on my ball. And so I just got a pair of reversibles. But luckily, I haven't had the bad luck that you've had with those shoes. So I haven't really had to.
You're a lot lighter.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I'm sure that's it. So
SST tanks under this weight.
Yeah, that's right. So I've been okay with those shoes. So but I stick to I only use a 9 or a 10 slider. I don't go to the heavy slides that often. I just find that once I'm lower, I just stick, and it just messes with my mind. So I just stick with a 9 or a 10
Just
slider.
got to find something that's comfortable.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, we have a couple submitted questions. So it may not apply to one of you, but when you win the previous tournament on the tour, do you feel extra pressure going into the next tournament?
No. I felt none.
No.
I won mine on a Wednesday.
Just wait. Has any of you ever won back-to-back cash tournaments?
Oh, Carrie, how's that going?
There is some pressure.
I don't think there is. I don't think there is, because you're more focused just making the cut again, because it's such a good field.
I think once you get to a point that you've been making cuts quite often, the cut is no longer the worry. It was trying to win or trying to get into a position to win. Obviously, cut is the first option, but there for a while I was on top of my game. I always felt like I should be making the cut, no problem. I was looking at getting deep into the tournament. So to take that question, I did feel quite a bit of pressure, especially after I won the Autumn Open, or won Heritage and then won the Autumn Open, then came to TPC, the only tournament I haven't won. And there was so much pressure to even try and make it, and I missed the cut.
No, you didn't.
Oh,
Gary Bear shot 400.
That's right,
And
yeah.
I always said,
Gary stopped
Gary no
me.
longer can win 3 in a row, and he's like whining in the corner on 15-16, right? So I remember that. but
I don't classify it as pressure though.
The
right?
situation.
I could see the third one because when has it happened?
I just
Yeah.
think yours
Yeah.
is over summer too. There's two different things going on. If you're in the same season, you got a lot of other things going on. I think for you had the whole summer to think about it. Right?
But I won the Autumn Open at the beginning of the year.
No, but your second one was Autumn
Basically, it's a
Open,
new
right?
season.
Oh, right.
So you had a whole summer to
Saying
think
the
about
pressure
it.
for the second
And
one.
not only that, you qualified. You made the finals for the WCBT finals, and then you wanted to be back there to reap the benefits or get there again, and that happened. So
Right.
yeah.
Honestly, I think trying to win the event again the next year is probably more pressure, right? And, Autumn Open's a perfect example for me, and not only that, I've been chasing Bruce Mortar for my entire lifetime, right? So obviously that's not going to happen anymore, but I think once you start thinking, okay, I've got this one and this one. In your case, Carrie, now you're thinking, okay, how much more pressure is there to complete the cycle? Right, you must have a ton more pressure because you build it up in your own mind, though.
Yeah, and I think that's...
Get back to building cuts and then start building your resume during Sunday, right?
Oh, for sure. Obviously, it's back to basics, right? Missing TPC cut this year has gotten me back to just trying to make the cut, first of all, and then moving on from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, always having that in the back of my mind to be one of the people to complete all 4 tournaments is huge on my
Ridiculous.
resume.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm always looking forward to. But the pressure, I think, is always there. You may not think of it, but once you probably make the cut and you realize that you could win back-to-back tournaments, it's got to creep into your mind a little bit. If not, you got a steel trap and you shouldn't be bowling. You should be doing something else.
A lot of it comes from within, though, too. You kind of put it on ourselves. I do.
You can't pinpoint that as a reason why you didn't necessarily compete well the next or didn't win the next one because you're thinking about the win.
I think it helps.
You should be going into every tournament thinking you're going to win.
Yeah.
So really, what does it matter, right?
Yeah.
I think mine was totally different. I think for me, one night, like I said,
I went on Wednesday.
I went on Wednesday, but it was different. It was anticlimactic, right? Because it didn't feel the same as winning when you win it on a Sunday. Then you roll into Regina. So when you play Regina, expectations are already high on what the cut's going to be. It's 22 something that year, right? And then you're following back here and down in Calgary, and I was going through a lot of personal stuff, and I was just happy to make the cut, and then I made first. I think qualified first in the 40s.
Yeah.
And then I got a surprise that honestly Mitch Davies is me all the whole way. So it was great. It was real great. But it was a different part of my life where I think I didn't have, in all fairness, I strive. It was different. I was different than the rest of the guys probably. When I finally won my event, you have a bucket list, right? You have your bucket list. I want to win Open National. And so basically, honestly though, I kind of like lost interest. I kind of hit my bucket list, and I was pretty much good with it.
Yeah. I can't speak to it from a cash tournament perspective, but I was just going to say I had the fortunate to win the Calgary Zone Trials about 3 years ago, and even the next year for that, I came into it with the mindset that I wanted to repeat and win again. So. So it's the same thing. You just have the expectation. I'm the champion, so you want to repeat. So it's all that pressure that you build on yourself, for sure. But there's no reason to do it. You should just come in confident and just play your game, and whatever happens. But just every time you win, it's just a confidence builder for the next tournament.
Yeah, for sure.
So actually, I have something I want to share. We actually Mitch Davies brought this up, and he invited 9 of his other friends, and basically it's a fantasy pool. So this year we're going to try something different with our friends. It's going to be $50 each. He invited 9 of his friends, and we're going to sit down and we're going to do a fantasy pool. No different than like hockey or football or basketball or baseball. So I'm really interested in how it works.
It was one of the best ideas Mitch Davies has ever had.
So kind of we had the rules.
First.
It was like 10 points for a cut, 10 points for each match win you have. And it's going to be a snake draft. I'm really kind of interested. We have rankings.
There's no money on the line, though.
No money on the line. Yeah, absolutely no money. That's why Gone back's in. So we have. If you look at this, we actually have a ranking sheet that Mitch has been nicely to make up for us. 5-pin universe ranking, overall points since 2012 rank, and the Regina Classic rank since 2012 to 13 as well. So. Really, it's going to be I think it's going to be in-depth draft. He thinks it's going to take about 2 hours. I actually have a pro scout. Derek Hall's my scout.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to have a good time with it. So maybe
Don't
next.
pick Mitch.
No, we're not going to pick Mitch. No. So you're really interested.
He's a sleeper pick for sure.
Surprised it's not on the second page.
All right, awesome, great podcast, guys. Thanks for everybody for joining. Thanks, Robbie, for joining us.
Thanks,
and
Robbie.
trying this live feed out. And yeah, good luck this weekend, boys.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.